Hey everybody, it's Mike. Today is Monday, June 15th, and I got a little video here for you today. Actually, I was planning on doing a video on Saturday, and the nature or the topic of that video was more of a continuation on the chess video that I made a little bit earlier about how the techniques in which small groups can then go and influence or play larger groups of people against each other. And the one I was going to go into is a little bit more into the nuts and bolts and how emojis can be used as a feedback loop when looking at emojis from like a big data perspective, from like looking at a large amount of data, sliced and diced by different demographics, age groups, geographies, so forth, to gather the gauge of the emotional, the collective emotional body in order to, how things are working, how they, and that's what the video is going to be about, that, and also like maybe some of the psychology of how presidents are sold on the subconscious level to the American public. And so I was planning on doing that, and when it came down to making the video, like, I created a bunch of slides and thought about all the different things which I wanted to talk about. I just couldn't do it. I did not have it in me. I wanted to, like, mentally, but I was like, I couldn't do it. And it was really unsettling. Like, I was kind of like walking all around in the church and figuring out, like, how can I just kind of like move through this, like, this resistance I was feeling. And then all of a sudden, I was like, I got to be away from technology. And I slammed the laptop. I had the laptop out because I was going to record on it, the same laptop I'm sitting with right now. And I shut the laptop and I put it in another room, and I got rid of the phone, and I was just like, not in a comfortable state, but, calmed down a bit, was able to find my center. And then, like, just had a realization, I want to go out to Turkey Point. And then as soon as that happened, like, everything shifted, and then the day became like really, really, like a really special day. So that's what I want to share with you. I want to share like some of the footage from up at Turkey Point, and I think it'll be a good video. So let's see what we got here. So let me first explain where I'm talking about. This is like right about where my church is right now. I live right around here. I used to live right up here, and right here is Turkey Point. This is the Susquehanna River. Right here is the 40th parallel. And so this is Turkey Point, and if you're familiar with the rights of the 40th parallel, if you have a copy of that, here's that map. The three main points are Chickies Rock, High Point, and Turkey Point. This is the third one. This is all about inspiration. That's the energy of this particular spot. And here's a map of it. The map of it is inspired in representation, like the sort of maps you'd get if you go to an amusement park, like at Disney World. They've got these cartoonish maps that are accurate, and so that's what this is. And there's a trail that it goes up, and you climb up a tree or climb up a hill, go through all of this. This is probably about like a 20-minute hike, and then you have this really nice view at this on this scaffolding which has been built. And so I've got a video here of some footage from Saturday while I was up there. So let me show that to you. This here is a view from Turkey Hill. If you've ever heard of like Turkey Hill ice cream or the convenience store or the iced tea, this is the hill which it's named for. We're right at the 40th parallel to Susquehanna River. If you look up at the top of the video, that's the Route 30 bridge. Right across is where High Point Scenic Villa is, and Chickies Rock is right up there. This is where the Susquehannocks live. This is where the Shanks Ferry people. Right here, this is the Route 30 bridge. High Point is probably right about here, and then off in the distance, right there, if you can see that, that's where Chickies Rock is. And that's one of the cool things about going to these three places. When you're at each one, you can see the other two. So, like when this is one of the cool things about the Wrights. You know, you go to each of these spots over a period of time, and like at each one, you can see with your own eyes. You're able to see the other places, and so I don't know. I think that's kind of cool. But this is where the Susquehannocks live. This is where the Shanks Ferry people live. This is where the petroglyphs are. As you can see from here, this is also where America's first architect surveyed the Susquehanna, and this is a watercolor painting done by Benjamin Latrobe from this exact vantage point in 1802. And Latrobe, the Freemason, was known as America's first architect. Symbolically, that might tell you something. So the significance of both this location, but then this location upon the primary circuitry, upon the unfolding of life on Earth, you know, it's marked in two dubious ways. You know, you've got the viewpoint from the first architect, and I told you this is Turkey Hill, place of the iced tea and the ice cream. And if you turn around and you look, you know, this is on top of a landfill. So there's so many different ways to look at it. I mean, the most obvious is how this has been, if you will, desecrated. But it is also, if we could also think about it, I suppose, is a place where everything can be transformed, you know, where it breaks down, the Pluto effect occurs. And I would certainly suggest we are in the time, both personally and collectively, where the opportunity for many, many new ways of being and experiencing life on Earth, you know, now's the time, you know, it's in play. So this is Mike, I hope. So, all right, so I go and I record that video, and I was up on top of Turkey Point, and it's like, you know, this is a popular park, and shortly after, and I was all by myself. You could see there was no one else who was around there, but the parking lot was like packed. There's other stuff like, you know, this is where the nature preserve is. People park here, and there's a bike trail that hugs the river, and it goes all the way down to a dam. And what's really cool, it's probably about 5 or 6 miles downstream this dam, but that is exactly where the petroglyphs are. So this whole area is really, really like significant historically and energetically, and like to the people who lived here before the Europeans arrived, or at least the most recent arrival of Europeans. It's like, you know, it's a charged place, and I was happy to be able to go and record that without anyone around. And then shortly when I was done recording it, some people showed up, and you know, I try not to. I interact a lot with regular folks, let's say, and I've come to realize that I can make regular folks very uncomfortable. I don't think of myself as a weirdo, but some of them do. So I've developed, like, I think a pretty good feel for interacting with people in a way that I can meet them where they are. I always look at it as an opportunity to kind of, like, you know, I don't know, like maybe share some information just a little bit more than wherever someone is at. And so I'm sitting up there, and I finished that video, and this couple comes walking up. It was a guy and a girl. I'd say they're probably in their early 20s. And I'm just sitting there, and I'm writing in my notebook. I had some ideas out, and they were both really like, you know, they walked up and could sense there was something. They're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be disturbing you." And I was like, "No, this is, you know, this is public property. This is all of our space." But they were considerate, and I recognized that they were considerate, and I started talking to them. You know, I started sharing with them some of the information of the area. And the guy was, you know, he's like in his early 20s. He was like a big dude. Like, you know, he looks like he's a big dude. And I started telling him I was about like where we are. Like, we are like on this part of this point, and we're looking upstream and downstream. It curves again downstream right here. This is like a couple miles is where the petroglyphs are, the most sacred location. And so this is filled with blind spots. You got a blind spot right here. You can't see what's coming down river. And then when this turns, you got a blind spot. So right here, or actually probably right here, Chickies Rock, and then right here are actual vantage points of like, if you would have, you know, let's say scouts, if you will, like looking upstream, you know what's coming down, because there was a time that this was very, very like, you know, this was an area of a lot of battles between like the Susquehannocks and the Iroquois Confederacy. And so, you know, you don't want to have your most sacred thing, like, you know, exposed. And so I was telling this to this guy, and I was like, you know, imagine like people are sitting here and they're looking, and how people can go and have line of sight contact to other people throughout, and you can communicate and all sorts of stuff. So I was kind of like getting them into that space and like telling them this story. And I see the guy's getting really like shaking his head. He's like, yeah, I can imagine that. I'm like, yeah, like a young man like you, a warrior type, you know, kind of, and explaining like, you know, half of the fun of like being human with an imagination is we can tap into other experiences. I was like, you know, we can tap into what that must be like. You know, who were these people? What was it like to be them? And I could tell that he was hooked. You know, he was into the story, you know, and then, you know, I let it go so it can become his own story. And then I go in a little bit more about, I was like, what do you guys think about conspiracy? And they're like, you know, their eyes lit up. You know, everyone, you know, nowadays, like, conspiracy is on really any extreme, like, you know, like, on how any extreme of how you take it. Like, you know, there's some degree of interest just because of the commercialization of conspiracy through, like, you know, the Dan Brown books and National Treasure, and, you know, that's been around for a while. And so they were excited. I'm like, you know about the Freemasons? They're like, yeah. And I go and I point out, you know, on the top here, you know, there's I think you could see in the video, you can't see it in this picture, there talks about America's first architect. I thought I clipped some images on that, which I didn't. But I told them about, you know, what that means, about how, like, from Freemasonry, like, you know, architect, the grand architect is the symbol of creator, of the creator. And so when you're calling someone America's first architect, because there's a watercolor painting done by Benjamin Latrobe, who was a high-ranking Freemasonry, who's one of the architects who worked on the U.S. Capitol, you know, we're seeing a vision of this exact same place from the same point of view from 200 years earlier. And just, you know, they're getting, I'm telling the story, and it's fun. Like, you know, that's part of the fun of, like, stepping into, like, other realms of consciousness, you know, in a simplistic way of time travel, if you will. And I can see they're excited. And then as soon as this is happening, you know, and as soon as this is happening, an eagle flies overhead. And because we're up on a hill, like Turkey Point, the entire trail right here, you know, you're climbing uphill. It's up high. And so the eagle was flying high relative to the river, which is its normal hunting grounds, but it was very close to where we were. And so I got some footage of that. Unfortunately, you can't see anything. I took this with my phone, and it looks like the eagle's far away, but let's go and see this for a second. Like, that was a very impressive view of an eagle, because we could see with the full wingspan. Here it comes. Yeah. Where are we? No. Can you see that?
Oh my gosh.
See if it comes back. So you can't really see it very well right here. This is a picture I took, and you can see the white feathers right there. But yeah, it was this bald eagle. It was this bald eagle which was just flying right overhead. And I was like in the middle of, I don't know, I was talking for like maybe a minute or two, and I could see like their heads were exploding. I was like, all right, that's a sign to get out of there. And so then I just like, you know, said my goodbyes and like grabbed my stuff and like disappeared. And so that's kind of part of the what I would call the magic of interacting with people, like popping in and popping out. So that's a lot of fun for me. And that's how I left. And, you know, that interaction and opened up the rest of my day in this really, really like synchronistic, joyful, fun way of just like, you know, neat things and neat interactions with people, one right after another. And the eagle seemed to be the sign that it was time for me to leave. So that's what I want to share with you today. I'll show a couple more slides here. You know, the Turkey Hill, this is the Turkey Hill, you know, if you're familiar with these brands. I think that as a convenience store, maybe even as a product, they're only available on the eastern side of the Mississippi. But, yeah, this stuff's poison. You don't want that in your body. And, you know, it's the landfill, you know, which I find very interesting. Right here, this is from the Turkey Hill website, and says how it began from the top of Turkey Hill. That's where we are. And this is this is the dairy right here. This is where they make the ice cream. And then this is the landfill. And this is the wind turbines, which, you know, fantastic in theory, I suppose. But, you know, if you go and do any work or any research into it, like, you know, wind turbines are, you know, do your own research. I don't want to tell you what, I don't want to give any conclusions, but I came to the conclusion it's not necessarily the best thing energetically or environmentally or ecologically, you know. So, but this is where it is, right up here, and we've got that up here. I've got it identified on this map. We got the wind turbines. But this area, and this area has a very artistic feel too, because this guy, Jeff Koons, who is an American sculptor, and he is known as, his works have sold for substantial sums, including at least 2 record auction prices for a work of a living artist. So from a mainstream reflection of value system, like this guy is like the greatest living artist because his stuff sells for the most. Well, this guy right here, Jeff Koons, is on a group which is who are on the other side of the river that is trying to fight the expansion of this this landfill. This landfill is trying to get approval to build up higher and higher, and they're like, no, we don't want to see your trash fill when we're looking across the river. He grew up in this area. I believe he still has a house, and they look this way to see the rising sun. And there's a trash there's a trash dump. You know, there's a landfill which is right there, and we can kind of go and see what I think is interesting symbolically of, like, you know, artists, however you want to go and take that word. It's not limited to one who creates, like, you know, traditional art. It's, you know, all of us who are conscious with what we're creating with our lives. But, you know, we can see there's a little bit of a wanting to take this back, and I would suggest that a lot of this work here, you know, what I'm trying to share with you on this area is in that same sort of vein. And then also want to give a little bit of history here of, like, these are all the signs which we find probably, each one of these signs, let's see, right here, are located, this is where Turkey Point, in this section, from here to here, and there's like 2-mile section, this is where we're going to find all these signs, like, you know, the Great Minquwa Path. This was the chief trail used by the Minquwa, the Susquehannock Indians, to carry great wealth in beaver skins to the white settlements on the Delaware during the mid-17th centuries. The Swedes, Dutch, and English warred for the control of the trade. You know, I'm not so interested in that story as much as I'm saying, like, this is the pathway where the Susquehannock and the Lenape, and this is where they walked. They walked right here. You know, further up the road is this sign, the Washington Borough Archaeological Sites. What we have here, this area contains one of the highest concentrations of archaeological sites in Pennsylvania. The sites range from small camps to large villages and cover 11,000 years of Native American culture. This spot, this area, has been inhabited for human beings, I'd say, a whole lot longer than 11,000 years. But you know, that's the mainstream telling of the story, like people have been here. And we've got this 40th parallel marker. We find that right here on the road. You know, we're marking the 40th parallel. And then this is on the that scaffolding. It's a survey marker of the National Geodesic Survey. You know, this was put up in 1950. It's the Susquehannock Station, right on the 40th parallel. Like, this spot is this whole location right here. No matter how you look at it, like, this is charged. This is the oldest river. This is where all the action goes. So it's you know, hopefully you could hear in my voice, I get excited about this. I hope that is contagious. This is meant to be experienced, not heard about. So all you folks who live on the eastern seaboard, New York to Washington, D.C., you're like, you know, an easy day trip. Washington's 2 hours from here. New York, maybe about 5 hours. Philly, 2 hours. You know, this is meant to be experienced. So you know, this is Mike. It's June 15th. I hope you're starting to see a light in the end of the tunnel. I hope you're starting to see how you have changed and where your changes have been taking place. Because the next stage is, it's coming around soon. Until next time.